scenario given the slow vaccine rollout in Japan. Fewer than 1% of the population has been vaccinated so far, and all are medical professionals. Most of the general public is not expected to be vaccinated by the time the Olympics open on July 23. The Japanese government and local Olympic organizers have said vaccination is not a prerequisite for the Olympics, although the IOC is encouraging the athletes to be vaccinated when they enter Japan. Last week, the IOC said it would cut back on the number of accredited participants entering Japan, providing credentials only to those who have essential and operational responsibilities. That's it for today's Olympic Corner. Remember to watch the SportsMax Zone for your daily Olympic updates.
Inside the last 21 minutes of the SportsMax Zone now for this Thursday, we are ready now to talk some football. Trinidad and Tobago's head coach Terry Fenwick says he'll have a stronger squad at his disposal by the time the Soca Warriors play their next World Cup qualifier in June. TNT could only manage a 1-1 draw with Puerto Rico on Sunday, giving them 4 points from their opening 2 games in the CONCACAF qualifying group. Jovan Jones gave the Soca Warriors a 54th minute lead in Sunday's game, only for Ricardo Rivera to give the Puerto Ricans a share of the points with a 72nd minute equalizer. And at the moment, this is how the Group F table looks after the first couple of matches. St. Kitts and Nevis, top of the table with maximum 6 points from their 2 games. Trinidad and Tobago in second spot on 4 points with a win and a draw, of course. Puerto Rico in third spot, Guyana in fourth, and the Bahamas in fifth spot. The Guyanese completed a 4-0 victory over the Bahamas earlier on this afternoon, so the Guyanese will now move up to 3 points and actually occupy third place ahead of the Puerto Ricans. Now we are scheduled to be talking with we are ready to talk to Brent Sancho, former TNT Central defender, to get his take on what happened with this match and what we have to regard, Brent, as a disappointing result for TNT. Puerto Rico, not exactly, potent opponents. They are ranked 179th in the world, and especially after the big win over the Guyanese, there was a lot more expected from TNT in this fixture.
Yes, certainly, Lance, and of course it was a disappointing performance by the Soca Warriors. But many critics here in Trinidad and Tobago and football enthusiasts was worried from since the game one. They thought that the performance against the Guyanese was below par as well. And we did face a very poor Guyanese team in terms of what they produced on the pitch. A lot more was expected from the Guyanese team, but we saw some of the cracks in the Guyana game. And of course, that extended onto the game against Puerto Rico. A very, very poor result when you put things into context. Puerto Rico, not known for their footballing pedigree. Trinidad and Tobago, of course, a World Cup aspirant, and they a team that believes that they should be in the final stages to qualify in the CONCACAF World Cup Qualifiers. But the performance that we saw against Puerto Rico was very poor, lethargic, and the team looked out of sorts, and it does put us in quite a dangerous situation with about 2 games or so left.
Yeah, the Puerto Ricans had lost 6 of their 10 games heading into this TNT fixture. And I want to get a comment from you quickly on Terry Fenwick's post-match comments when he is saying that he'll have a stronger squad at his disposal by the time the next set of qualifying matches get going in June. I think all of the players on the TNT roster were overseas-based players, weren't they? The starting 11 for the Puerto Rico game?
Yeah, they were all overseas-based players.
Yes.
They all would have had their last contracts or played somewhere outside of Trinidad and Tobago. This is a squad with supposed a lot of quality. When you talk of the likes of Jovan Jones, Levi Garcia, Kaleem Highland, just to name a few. And as well, Lance, a lot of experience. So a lot more was expected from them.
Yeah, which is where I'm going with this, Brent, because the post-match comments from Terry Fenwick is suggesting that his squad wasn't strong enough, by virtue of him saying that he'll have a lot stronger squad when we next see TNT in June. So how do you assess those comments?
Of course, the expectation is that they would bring in more players from outside of Trinidad with Trinidad percentage. But you already have a very strong squad as it relates to the both games that were played in the World Cup qualifier. I think what we saw was a very lackluster performance, and it did not necessarily have to do with personnel, Lance. It had a lot to do with the approach for both games. Particularly in the second game, you took a squad of 20-plus players, but there was still, of course, the same starting 11 that we saw in Guyana. And one had to suggest that fatigue would have stepped in because the performance was slow, methodical, and it left a lot to desire. So in terms of bringing in more players, I don't think that is the problem necessarily. It's fixing the problem with the current players that we have now.
I want to talk systems and personnel, Brent. Firstly, let's talk people. In terms of the players deployed in the Puerto Rico game and the positions in which they were played, did Terry Fenwick get that right, you believe?
I think in two aspects he would have gotten it wrong. The first aspect, George, I think for playing the same team, as I said, that played a lot of minutes against the Guyanese team, and of course playing an artificial turf, which we all know is very taxing on the body, and an ageable squad to add to that. I think from that squad selection, I think he got it wrong. I think secondly, there was no adjustment, and I think that's a critical point. One of the things that Puerto Rico did very well is that they did their homework on Trinidad and Tobago. They realized the likes of Levi Garcia is a threat and Jovin Jones is a threat. And every time those two players picked the ball up, they were doubled and triple teams in some instances. But we didn't see a shift in terms of tactical approach. We thought they could have gone to two up front. He could have gone to a three-back system. There's so many different situations. The point is, he should have given Puerto Rico a different look. Because clearly, Close Sarachan of Puerto Rico seemed to have sussed us out, and a lot felt that he could have changed things tactically going into the second half, and even during the first half, where he could have changed it up a bit.
Yeah, but on the personnel point, I'm especially looking at the fullback positions. The men who started at fullback in the Puerto Rico game, were they the best options available to Coach Terry Fenwick? Did he make the right decision by going with those two from the start?
Well, first of all, both Hackshaw and Aubrey David, for their clubs that they play, respectively for their clubs, they play in different positions. Hackshaw is known as a defensive midfielder. He plays in the 6 role, and he does play centre half. Aubrey David plays for Saprissa in Costa Rica, and he does play most of his time at the centre half position. So in terms of square pegs and wrong holes, I think that there is a point there. As it relates, and they may have better options as it relates to personnel in those two particular positions. So there was some head scratching as it relates to the deployment of some of the players that played. And those two positions, as you correctly observed, are one of them that have some of the football enthusiasts here in Trinidad wondering why they were selected to play there again.
Yeah, as we break, Brent, with time, because I'm wondering, the 11 that played, well, the same 11 started the 2 games. Has that 11 played before, together, in a competitive match?
Yeah, there's some there. There's, for example, Primus and Batu that played centre half position. They grew up playing youth football together.
No, man, I'm talking the collective, the team that started against Guyana.
Collectively, no.
Right, no, so I'm saying we can't cut the coach some slack because they were probably a case of familiar strangers in both the Guyana game and the Puerto Rico game. So I'm trying to look on the bright side and say, a few weeks from now, June 5, one game, June 8, another game. By the time June comes around, if these players are able to build from the familiar stranger position that they found themselves in the opening 2 games, we should expect that this selection should be able to give us much more than they showed over these first 2 games, Brent.
The trouble with that, George, is the fact that this is a very experienced squad. When you look at the ages of the players, when you look at the amount of caps that they have, when you look at what they have been able to achieve as international footballers, you're talking about a very, very experienced squad. So despite the fact that, yes, you may think that this 11 haven't played together, there are a lot of players on that pitch that have played a lot of minutes for Trinidad and Tobago. And let's put things into context. We are playing against Caribbean opposition, and normally for Trinidad and Tobago, this should be a stroll in the park. So something is definitely not clicking right. And for most of the Trinidad and Tobago fans, we can only hope that things change very quickly, as we do have to get positive results if we are to move out of the group stages.
All right, speaking of change, Aguero. Is it the right time for him to say goodbye to Manchester City as we go to the break, Brent?
Yeah, certainly. I think so. I think when you look at the direction that Manchester City is going in, I think it's the right time for him to move on. He's had a tremendous contribution to Man City. And I feel that now Pep Guardiola is now looking at longevity, of course, as it relates to his squad. It's very similar to the same situation as Fernandinho, who I expect as well to leave Man City this season. But they have served the boys, the noisy neighbors, very well in the time that they spent at the club.
Thank you very much. I'll bring you back to Jamaica to commentate on Aguero wearing the number 10 for Hornet Gardens in the National Premier League, all right?
I'm looking forward to that one.
Thank you, Brent. Much more from us after this break.